will it be today? I'm iCaveDave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple leaks, news and rumours every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring my bell. So I don't know about you, but I am ready to hate refresh the Apple events page on the website for at least 5 minutes at the top of every hour today, with my money being on us seeing invites to Apple's Mac event about 5 hours from this video going live at about 5 PM UTC. But as I mentioned yesterday, people seem to be split on whether we'll see the event invites this week or next week. I hope I'm not wasting my time today. Now, while most people are excited for Apple's new MacBook Pros with that M1X inside, I'm way more interested in Apple's Mac Mini, and it might just be the most exciting update to the Mac Mini since it was first released way back in 2005, before Apple had even made the switch to Intel. That's right, the first Mac Mini was actually G4 PowerPC powered. So in today's show, we are showing love to the Mac Mini, at least until the M1, probably the least talked about Mac that money could buy. The Mac Mini is actually the only Mac that doesn't find a spot in Steve Jobs' product matrix, made up of portable consumer and pro MacBooks, and the consumer iMac and the Mac Pro in the desktop column. Mac Mini was created with a single purpose in mind: to steal users from Windows. About as bare bones as Apple could bring themselves to make. In a box you got a Mac Mini and a power cable. That was it. No keyboard, no mouse, no trackpad, no display, no speakers. I mean, beyond the internal one that's basically just there as an accessibility feature, not something designed to be relied upon in the long term. As this was a small computer in a small form factor designed to replace a full-size PC tower, the idea was to reuse your peripherals, your keyboard, mouse and display, and most likely your computer speakers from the PC that you were moving over from. This means that in a lot of cases, beyond the software, the experience of using this Mac Mini was kind of inconsistent. With every other Mac, bar the Mac Pro, which, let's be honest, if you're buying, you probably are getting the Pro Display XDR2, because you have far too much money. With a Mac Mini, you could be using some high-end reference monitor or a cast-off from your office. You could be using a $9 keyboard from an old Dell or a high-end mechanical keyboard. All of this is okay because the Mac Mini was literally designed as just that gateway drug, a first look into the world of Macs. And as Steve Jobs said when he was explaining the experience of iTunes coming to Windows,
well, we've got cards and letters from lots of people that say that iTunes is their favorite app on Windows.
But I mean, I knew you. I think here at D actually.
It's like giving a glass of ice water to somebody in hell.
And I think the same applies here for the Mac Mini. Even if the experience isn't the perfect one that you would get with a full-on Mac, it is much nicer than what you would experience with your PC. More importantly, this lack of extra peripherals meant that the Mac Mini could be sold at an incredibly compelling price, just $499. And that's a price I think Apple would love to be able to get back to someday, whether that comes through a Mac Mini SE, keeping the M1 after the M2 launches, or simply pushing down the price year on year, as Apple was able to do with the M1, dropping the price versus the previous underpowered Intel option by $100, while massively outperforming it. But Mac Mini didn't stay there at the entry level for too long, and Mac Mini servers and higher end regular models came along pretty quickly over time, and the Mini became a favourite of developers who love to be able to customise a lot of their setup. And honestly, it's that ability to have the setup that's tailored that is the reason I'm a big fan of the Mac Mini. The M1 wasn't my first Mac Mini either. I had a 2009 Core 2 Duo version that I bought used, but with the setup that I have now, and will be drastically improving this weekend, being able to swap out the Mac Mini at the core of it without changing the rest of the setup will be a really compelling option. If you like to keep up to date as well, the Mac Mini makes a huge amount of sense. It's the cheapest Mac that you can buy, it's also the best value in terms of performance for the dollar, and the cost of ownership is almost zero. I bought mine with my wife's education discount. She was studying for a master's degree at the time, and that cost me £624. Now they're selling for just £25 less than that used on eBay a year later. Even if you buy it at full retail, owning this would have cost me £9 a month at this point. So they're easy to resell, they're cheap comparatively to ship, and are small enough to take with you as long as there's something you can plug it into at the other end. And with M1, they're incredibly snappy, and in many tasks actually outperform the entry-level Mac Pro, which costs nearly 10 times as much. But M1X will likely take this to the next level for the Mac Mini. Just as with the higher-end Mac Minis of the past, this will basically give the best-case scenario performance for the hardware inside, without the compromises that might need to be made with anything battery-powered. The fans can be larger than in a laptop because you are not constrained by space quite as much, keeping peak performance for much longer. There's no concern of saving battery life. The Mac Mini will allow those 8 performance Avalanche cores and 2 efficiency Blizzard cores to do exactly what they do best. Maths, I suppose, but maths really quickly and then assembled into pretty things on the screen, or calculating big numbers, or whatever you need it to do. And even better, there'll be 16 or 32 GPU cores there too to push those pixels to the limit. The M1 was no slouch with its 8-core GPU, but 2 to 4 times that should be pretty impressive. The M1 will also not likely be limited to a total of 2 displays, one of those being built in on the M1 laptops, but even on the M1 version the Mac Mini is able to run a couple of 4K displays quite comfortably, and in this case with the M1X it will be able to probably push that to 3. So it's nice to know you can have a couple of big high-res displays if the mood takes you. And of course there are some advantages to Apple Silicon that the Mac Mini does miss out on. The long battery life is a huge advantage for the notebooks, and while you obviously don't need to use the Mac Mini on the go, it's still kind of beyond me that desktop computers in 2021 don't by default include an internal battery backup that you could have kick in if you have a power outage, not to carry on working, but a system that could safely close down your machine and save all your work. But all that efficiency that the Apple Silicon has is a little bit wasted on a desktop, although being incredibly quiet is very much appreciated. Now the redesign of the Mac Mini is probably the least consequential change, but it's also kind of the most exciting and noticeable change. I like the look now, but I also really like the look of the new one that we expect thanks to John Prosser and Ian Zeblo for rendering it for us. But either way, bring on the new model, I'm here for it, and so is my shiny new look studio that will hopefully be done by the weekend. Now, are you after the Mac Mini or one of the new MacBook Pro models with M1X? Let me know down in the comments. And before we get into iCaveAnswers, which is our next section where I answer your questions, if you've got this far in the video, please hit like, subscribe, so that you don't miss the next one. You can even ring the bell. First question comes from James Apple. Are we getting the M1X Macs this month? Because it seems like Mark Gurman isn't confident they'll come this month based on his newsletter. iCaveAnswers. So last week, Mark Gurman did say we're getting them in October, so my money is still on getting the invites today, but I also won't be surprised if we don't get them until next week. I still think the event's going to be in October, even if they don't ship until November. That said, Mark Gurman himself was actually pointing out that MacBook Pros are out of stock at pretty much all locations in the US, and also the UK now. So that should point you in the right direction. Rob, does it make sense to install a glass screen protector on a laminated screen iPad? I just upgraded to the M1 iPad Pro from the 7th gen iPad, and I'm wondering if I should install a screen protector. But it seems counterproductive to install a glass screen protector because I would just be undoing the laminated screen and create a gap from the surface to the screen. I put a DBrand Skin on to protect the back of the iPad, but I'm worried about not having the front screen protection, although I don't want to ruin the beautiful screen with protectors. What should one do? So to be honest, screen protectors on the iPad, you're unlikely to stop yourself from cracking the screen with a screen protector. If you're going to bash it hard enough that you would break the display, having that glass screen protector there is not going to stop it. The screen protector will stop it from getting little surface scratches and imperfections, but at the same time it also won't feel as good, not in terms just of the look and being slightly further away from your content, but also the fact that the glass surface on Apple's devices just feels different to the glass that you get on screen protectors. I don't know why, but it does. I personally do use a screen protector, but not a glass one. I use a matte screen protector on my iPad, and it is purely, well, it's for 2 reasons. The first is to protect from scratches, but the second is I prefer the feel of the screen with this, especially when using the Apple Pencil. Feels a little bit more like paper. It's not one of the paper-like ones, it's not the expensive ones, but it does the job for me. So it very much comes down to personal preference. I don't think you're going to save yourself from cracking a screen by putting one on there, but I do think you might save it from some slight surface imperfections. I would say it comes down to, do you want to use this for its useful life, or do you want to sell it on and upgrade when the next one comes out? If you want to upgrade it, probably put a screen protector on there. Bruce Grubb asks, iCaveAnswers, I skimmed through a 180-page ruling on the Apple versus Epic trial and found that nearly every news outlet got it wrong. Apple lost on one and only 1 point, the whole anti-steering thing. The court even upheld Apple's right to charge its percentage for stuff using its code off the store. Why have so many journalists gotten it wrong? Probably because the vast majority of journalists in the tech space just report what each other are saying. This is not really a massive criticism. It's very difficult to work in a scenario like this where speed is kind of the essence. You need to get a story out. But, you know, even if you get the story out first, you can then probably go back and fact check it and adjust it, because it's not like we're printing this stuff. This is stuff that's online. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff that is found in tech journalism that is re-reporting stuff that other people have reported. And I'll be honest, it's what I need to do here sometimes as well, because I'm not a full-time journalist. I do a full-time job as well, and this is kind of my side gig, is reporting what's out there. I didn't know exactly what happened with it, but I also didn't cover it in a great deal of detail, because I didn't think it was that interesting. Evan Rogers asks, iCaveAnswers, since we now seem to expect the M2 in Q3 to Q4 of 2022, do you think it will have A15 or A16 cores, and will it use TSMC's N4 or N3 node? Very difficult. There's been some talk of whether the Mac chips will kind of lead the iPhone now, or vice versa. Which one's going to be the priority for Apple? I would say it's probably still going to be the iPhone, because, you know, the iPhone is massively the bigger seller. In terms of the A15 or A16 cores, I really kind of hope it's A15. And I know that sounds silly because A16 will be faster, but I just want the numbers to mean something and not just what order these chips came out in for the Macs. I really want those numbers to actually mean the generation, so they go up at the same speed as the generations of the A series chips. That's what I would like, just to remove confusion, just so that everything runs in the right level of generations. Hopefully that makes sense. I just don't want it to be confusing. Team Kinetics asks, iCaveAnswers, on a scale of 1 to I'll shave my eyebrows off if it doesn't happen, how confident are you we will get an event invite tomorrow, Tuesday the 12th of October 2021? So that's today now. I'm still not of the level of confidence where I would remove bodily hair. So I'm going to go back to, I think, a 7 or an 8, which is what I said last time, not shaving anything. Team Kinetics again asks, will you be upgrading to Windows 11? No, I don't use Windows, so absolutely not. Today I spoke with someone who saw my iPhone 12 Pro Max and said, oh, the old one, before showing off their iPhone 13. As I don't want to change phones this year, when do you think it's likely that the new MacBook Pro will ship so that I can unnecessarily tech flex again? If we do get our invites tomorrow, then we will have our event on the 19th, which means that we will be shipping stuff on the 26th. That would be my very, very solid hope. And finally from Team Kinetics, given the current release schedule, is it looking more likely that Apple will release an M chip one year and an X variant the following year, then alternate years with a 2-year chip upgrade cycle moving forwards? M1 Q4 of 2020, M1X Q4 of 2021, M2 Q4 of 2022, etc. I really hope not, and I think that this is basically a production blip. I think Apple did want to bring out the M1Xs earlier in the year and then M2 at this point, but I think everything's kind of been pushed back again because of production issues and not because this is what Apple wants to do. If they were going to do that, it would be M1, M2X, M3, M4X. Again, because I think that the architecture changes is more important to keep in line with the numbers than I think having marketing names for things. But all that being said, marketing names are marketing names. It's not important. And also, I never understood why iPad Pros came out every 18 months when the chips inside them basically came out every 12 months, and then we got like big gaps. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Joe asks, iCaveAnswers, iSetup answers, what do you plan on keeping from the setup? I would probably keep those massive monitors and switch out the M1 Mac Mini for the M1X Mac Mini. So yeah, the displays are definitely staying, but they're going to be reconfigured. So the 4K one will be on my desk, 1080p big one at the top will be on the wall somewhere, so it can be a backdrop for videos, so we could maybe have something moving in the background, maybe something else. Not 100% sure on what's going to be on there yet, but that's the plan, is that, yeah, we're going to keep the same displays. The M1 Mac Mini will be swapped out for the M1X, in theory, as long as it actually comes out in a reasonable length of time, and that I can afford it at the time. The stuff that's changing is walls, desks, furniture, all that sort of stuff. Josh asks, iCaveAnswers, what is your favourite Apple Watch face? I keep it kind of simple. I use one of the Nike ones. I like to use a digital face rather than a hands face. It's basically the Many Complications one. I can't remember what it's called, but with a digital face in the middle. So I've got the 4 edge complications and then time and date in the middle, I think. And yeah, I like complications on it. Eugene King asks, iCaveAnswers, how many generations of Apple Silicon are likely to be sold for any particular Mac at the same time? As an example, when the entry-level Mac Mini graduates to the M2 chip, will M1 Minis still be produced? P.S. I chuckled when you sang Ring My Bell and also appreciated the Anita Ward clip. So I have this feeling that Apple is going to run it very much like they do for the iPhones, so we're going to get the M2 comes out and then the M1 will get a price drop. So the M2 will replace the M1 at those prices, so we'll get an M2 MacBook Air at $1,000, an M2 MacBook Pro maybe at $1,300 still, we'll get the M2 Mac Mini at $699, and then we'll get maybe an M1 of each of those staying at $100 less, maybe $150 less. We will see what the price difference is, but that would make the most sense for me to give that kind of range with just slightly older chips rather than going for a budget option on the builds. I think that would make the most sense, but I don't think they'll go back more than a couple of years on stuff, so probably just 1 generation older as a budget option. And that's it for this show, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and if you've got a question, don't forget, hashtag iCaveAnswers down in the comments section with your question, and don't forget to subscribe and like if you didn't already. I've asked you 3 times now, surely that's enough.